Ethan Cole had seen many strange worlds, but nothing like Draxus IV. The planet was harsh, its surface rocky and scarred with deep canyons and wide plains of jagged stones. The sky was a dull green, and two suns burned low on the horizon, casting long shadows that twisted across the land like dark fingers. Wind howled across the barren landscape, carrying fine dust that burned the skin. It was a place no human had chosen to live willingly. Yet here he was, stranded after his small scouting ship was hit by enemy fire. The crash had been violent. Metal screamed as it tore through the atmosphere, and the heat from re-entry had burned the ship's hull in several places. Ethan remembered the alarms, the shaking, and the flash of light that blinded him for a moment. Then silence. When he opened his eyes, the ship lay broken across a rocky plateau, one engine burning, the other twisted and useless. Pain surged through his shoulder and side, but he forced himself to move. The first rule of survival was simple: keep moving. He pulled himself out of the wreckage and scanned the horizon. Smoke and dust rose from the crater where his ship had landed. Beyond that, he saw no life. No plants, no water, no signs of any living creature. Only rocks, winds, and an endless expanse of danger. He swallowed hard. Draxus IV was a death world, one that would kill humans quickly if they weren't careful. Ethan's hand went to his sidearm, checking it instinctively. The Terran Union had taught him to always be ready. He wasn't just a pilot. He was trained in survival and combat, and that knowledge was going to be his only chance here. But as he looked around, he realized he was not alone. A shadow moved in the distance, tall and fast. He froze. The shadow became clearer as it approached. Ethan's heart skipped a beat. He had read about the Kareth in the Union files, of course. They were taller than humans, with skin that glowed faintly in certain lights. Their eyes were wide and sharp, their movements graceful but deadly. They were fierce warriors known for hunting humans for sport. And now one of them was walking straight toward him. The being stopped a few meters away. She looked at him with sharp silver eyes. Her skin reflected the sunlight, making her appear almost like she was lit from within. She was armed, holding a long energy lance that hummed softly. Her armor was sleek, unlike any human design, built to allow speed and strength. Ethan studied her carefully. Every instinct told him to run, to hide, to fight, but he didn't. He stayed where he was, hands raised, showing he was not a threat. "You stand on sacred ground, human," she said, her voice calm but with an edge that warned of immediate danger. "Give me one reason I should not kill you." Ethan swallowed, feeling the rough taste of dust and fear in his mouth. His body ached and his shoulder burned from the crash, but he forced himself to speak. "Because if you do, you'll lose the only person who can get you off this rock." Her eyes narrowed. "Explain." "I crashed. My ship is damaged, but the other ships in my fleet can find this place if I send a signal," he said carefully. "I can get you home or to safety if you stop attacking me." The Kareth commander's gaze didn't falter. Ethan noticed a flicker in her eyes, something like surprise, but it vanished quickly. "Why should I trust a human?" she asked. Ethan shrugged, wincing from the pain in his shoulder. "You don't have to. But if you want to survive the storm coming in, you'll have to work with me. Alone you will die out here." She tilted her head, watching him with caution. Ethan could feel her studying him, analyzing every word, every movement. He knew the Kareth were intelligent. They didn't make decisions quickly. They weighed options, looked for weaknesses, and he had to give her a reason not to strike first. "I know your kind sees us as weak, as fragile," Ethan said slowly, his voice low. "But you're wrong. Humans survive because we adapt. We fight, we endure, and sometimes we even care about each other. I am offering you a choice, not a fight." The Kareth's energy lance lowered slightly, but she didn't speak. Ethan took a step closer, careful not to seem threatening. He needed to show her he meant what he said, and that he could back it up if necessary. "Look," he said, scanning the broken land around them. "That storm coming in is bigger than either of us. It will crush anyone caught outside. Alone we die. Together we might just survive." She studied him for a long moment. The wind whipped her hair across her face, and the two suns glinted off her silver skin. Ethan held his gaze, refusing to show fear. He was tired, hurt, and running on instinct, but he knew one thing. If he could make her see that he was worth keeping alive, he would survive. Finally, she spoke. "I am Vera," she said, commander of the Kareth strike team. "And you are?" "Ethan Cole," he replied. "Pilot Terran Union." "Pilot," she repeated. Her tone was almost amused. You have no armor, no soldiers, and yet you stand before me without fear." Ethan smiled faintly. "Fear is there," he admitted, "but I do not let it control me. You are strong, faster, smarter in many ways, but you are not invincible, and neither am I. Alone, we are weak. Together, maybe we have a chance." Vera's eyes narrowed, and Ethan noticed a slight shift in her posture. She didn't lower her weapon completely, but she didn't attack either. That was all the opening he needed. "Come with me," Ethan said, motioning toward the jagged rocks nearby. "We can find shelter. Then we can figure out our next move." "Fighting each other now is pointless," Vera hesitated. The wind tore at her cloak, and her lance hummed with quiet energy. Finally, she nodded once sharply. Without another word, she followed him toward the rocky ridge. The journey was not easy. The storm had started, and sand and dust cut across their faces. Ethan moved slowly, mindful of his injuries, but he kept his step steady. Vera's stride was long and smooth, but she matched him, watching every move, listening to every sound. Ethan realized that although she appeared alien, there was something in her that mirrored human instincts: caution, curiosity, and perhaps even respect for someone brave enough to face danger without flinching. As they climbed higher, Ethan found a cave entrance hidden behind a cluster of jagged stones. He peered inside. It was dark, but it offered protection from the wind and the rain that had begun to fall. "Here," he said, stepping inside. "This will keep us safe for the night." Vera followed, her lance still in hand. She scanned the interior, noting its depth and small side chambers. Then she lowered her weapon. "You have survived long enough to bring me here," she said. "That is interesting." Ethan nodded, easing himself down onto a flat rock. Pain shot through his shoulder, but he ignored it. "Interesting is one word for it," he said with a tired smile. "Survival is another." Vera studied him closely. Ethan noticed her eyes linger on his sidearm and the small combat knife strapped to his leg. "You are prepared," she said. "Even after the crash, you are not helpless." "I never am," Ethan replied simply. "It's not about never being afraid. It's about not letting fear stop you." Vera's eyes softened slightly. She had expected fear, weakness, maybe begging. Instead, she found confidence, calm, and a strange kind of courage. She didn't understand it fully, but it made her pause in a way no human had before. The storm raged outside, the wind howling like angry spirits, rain mixed with dust and sand, cutting across the cave entrance. Ethan checked his communicator, knowing the signals were weak, but he tried anyway. No response. The fleet would not find him tonight. Not yet. Vera sat across from him, her lance resting beside her. She did not speak for a long time. Ethan watched her, sensing her thoughts. She was questioning him, yes, but also herself. For centuries, the Kareth had hunted humans, believing them weak, foolish, and unworthy. And yet here was one who faced her without fear, who offered her a choice instead of a fight. Ethan broke the silence. "You don't have to trust me," he said. "You just have to survive. That is all." Vera looked at him, the silver glow of her skin reflecting the cave's dim light. "You are strange, human," she said finally. "Most would have died before they even spoke. Why aren't you afraid?" Ethan looked at her steadily. "I am afraid," he admitted. "But I choose to act anyway. Fear tells you what is dangerous. Courage tells you what is worth living for." Vieira blinked, unprepared for the answer. It was not arrogance. It was not bravado. It was simple human truth. And for the first time, she wondered if humans were more than the weak creatures her people had always claimed them to be. The cave was quiet except for the storm outside. Ethan and Vera, human and Kareth, sat facing each other in silence, the beginnings of something neither fully understood stirring between them. Survival had brought them together, but something else, a strange connection. A spark of curiosity and respect was beginning to form, and in that harsh, storm-battered cave, on a world that wanted to kill them both, a human and an alien stared at each other, neither knowing what the future held, but both understanding one simple truth: they were not alone. The storm outside raged on, whipping dust and rain against the rocks. Ethan sat on a flat stone, pressing a rag against his shoulder to ease the pain from the crash. Vieira sat across from him, her knees drawn up, her lance resting against the cave wall. The wind made low, angry noises outside, like the planet itself was alive and warning them. Ethan studied her carefully. She was watching him too, her silver eyes scanning every movement. He had learned long ago that in moments like this, silence could be as powerful as words. Neither spoke for a few minutes, listening to the storm. The cave was their shield against the harsh world outside, but it also made them trapped together. Finally, Vera broke the silence. "You think survival is simple?" she said, her voice calm but not unkind. "You think humans can endure anything?" Ethan shook his head. "No, I know humans fail. I know we die. But we try, even when the odds are against us. That is what keeps us alive, trying even when fear is strong." Vera looked at him for a long time. The words sounded almost strange coming from a human, but there was truth in them. Most Kareth saw humans as weak, scared, and small-minded. Ethan did not seem weak. He did not seem afraid, and somehow he made surviving the storm seem possible. "Why do you not fear me?" she asked after a moment, her eyes narrow and curious. Ethan tilted his head. "I am afraid," he admitted. "I fear getting hurt, failing, dying. But I do not let fear stop me. Fear tells me what to be careful of, not what to run from. That is different from most humans." Vera studied him in silence, the flickering light of the storm reflecting in her silver eyes. For the first time she wondered what made humans different. They were not stronger, not faster, and certainly not as skilled as Kareth warriors. And yet there was something inside him that was not weakness. It was a stubborn courage that refused to die. The cave grew colder as the storm continued. Ethan tore strips from his shirt to bandage his shoulder properly. Vera watched, her expression unreadable, but she did not interfere. She was capable of helping him, of healing the wound quickly with her advanced alien skills. But she chose not to. Perhaps she wanted to see how he handled pain. Perhaps she wanted to see how human determination worked. "You will survive because you are stubborn," she said quietly. Ethan smiled faintly. Stubbornness has its uses. They moved carefully inside the cave to find a better place to rest. The ground was uneven, and water had started to leak in from the storm above. Ethan pointed to a small ledge off to the side. "We can sleep there. Keep dry, keep safe." Vera nodded. She stepped lightly, her movements precise and controlled. Ethan watched, fascinated by the grace of her body. She was unlike any creature he had ever seen. Her muscles moved smoothly, but there was strength beneath the surface. She could easily have killed him with one strike, but she had not. That alone puzzled him. "Why do you spare me?" he asked, curious. Vera looked at him, her eyes sharp. "Because killing you would serve no purpose." Ethan considered that answer. It was simple, and yet there was more in it. She could have attacked him at any moment, but she did not. She had made a choice, just like he had made a choice to survive. And in that choice he saw something he did not expect: respect. They settled on the ledge, facing each other. The cave was small, but it offered some protection from the wind. Ethan reached for his water supply, sharing a few sips with her. Vera had no need for water like humans did, but she accepted it. It was a small gesture, yet it meant something. Trust, or at least temporary trust. "You humans are strange," Vera said finally, taking a sip of water. "You do not run from fear. You welcome pain and you survive." Ethan shrugged. "We have to. There is no other choice. Life does not wait for anyone, and fear will not protect you." Vera watched him quietly. She had studied humans before, through sensors, through spies, through battle reports. She had always believed they were weak, desperate, and easy to kill. But this human, he was different. He faced her without hesitation, without begging, without lying, and that made him dangerous, not with weapons, but with his mind and will. The storm slowed slightly, but the sky remained green and heavy. Ethan could see faint lightning in the distance, cracks of light that split the sky. The air smelled of ozone and dust, and each breath burned slightly, but it was tolerable. They had survived the worst of it for now. Ethan finally asked, "How long have you been here?" Vera tilted her head. "I do not keep time the way humans do. Days and nights are markers for your kind. For me, it is cycles of duty. I have been assigned to this planet for the last cycle. My task is simple: secure the area, ensure no humans survive to report and return. That is my duty." "And now?" Ethan asked, leaning slightly forward, curious. Vera's eyes met his. "Now, I am uncertain." He could see it then, the crack in her armor. Not her physical armor, but the invisible armor of her mind and belief. The storm had forced them together. Survival had forced conversation. And now she was beginning to question everything she had been taught about humans. Ethan spoke softly, not wanting to push too much. "You do not have to trust me. You do not have to be my friend. But if you want to survive, you need to work with me. That is all." Vera considered his words carefully. In the silence of the cave, the wind and rain outside faded to a low hum. She had faced many humans, and most of them would have begged, cried, or fought without thought. Ethan had done none of those things. He had looked at her and understood the danger, but he had not flinched. Finally, she nodded. "We will work together for now," she said. Ethan nodded back. "That is all I ask." The night stretched on, and neither slept. Ethan listened to the storm outside and to the quiet movements of Vera beside him. She was restless, her lance never far from her, but she did not attack him, and that was enough for now. He could feel her tension, the constant alertness of a warrior. He also realized that if he wanted to survive, he would need to understand her, not just fight beside her. Hours passed. The storm showed no sign of letting up. Ethan took out some rations, sharing a small portion with Vera. She looked at the food curiously, sniffed it, and then accepted it. She did not eat much, but it was another step toward trust, another step toward understanding. "Humans are persistent," Vera said after a moment, her voice soft. "Even in the worst conditions, you keep moving forward." Ethan smiled faintly. "Persistence is all we have sometimes. Fear is natural, pain is natural, but giving up is not an option. You either survive or you die." Vera remained silent for a long time. She was thinking, observing, measuring. She had lived many cycles, fought many battles, and yet this human had changed something inside her. He was not like the others. He did not act out of fear or anger. He acted out of purpose. Ethan could feel her watching him. "You do not have to decide everything tonight," he said. "Just survive. That is all that matters." Vera looked at him, her eyes reflecting the faint light from the cave walls. "You are strange, human," she said quietly. "Most of your kind would panic or beg. You do not." Ethan shrugged. "Maybe. Or maybe we just know that panicking does not help. Fear is only useful if you listen to it, not let it control you." She considered this, then nodded slightly. "Perhaps there is more to humans than I thought." Ethan smiled faintly. It was a small smile, tired and faint, but it carried hope. There is always more. Outside, the storm began to calm slightly, though the sky remained green and heavy. Ethan and Vera sat together in the cave, facing the world outside but shielded from its worst. They did not speak much, but there was understanding between them now. Survival had brought them together. But something else, curiosity, respect, maybe even the first seed of trust, was beginning to grow. Ethan rested his head against the stone, closing his eyes for a brief moment. He knew the storm would not be the only danger here. The planet was full of unknown threats, and soon others would come looking. But for now he was alive, and Vera, strange as it was also alive. When he opened his eyes, she was watching him again. Ethan met her gaze and gave a small nod. It was a silent promise. Survive tonight, and tomorrow they would face whatever came together. Vera's silver eyes flickered, almost like a spark of understanding. For the first time, she questioned her mission. For the first time, she wondered if humans were not just weak creatures to be eliminated. And for the first time, she felt the stirrings of something she did not recognize, something dangerous, something that could change everything. The cave grew quiet, the storm fading outside. Ethan and Vera sat together, human and Kareth, two beings from different worlds forced together by survival, and in that quiet something shifted, something that neither of them could yet name. They were no longer enemies, not yet friends, but for the first time they were allies, and that alliance, fragile as it was, would be the key to surviving the dangers of Draxus 4. The storm had passed, leaving Draxus 4 quiet but not calm. The wind still swept across the jagged rocks, carrying dust and the faint scent of ozone. Ethan Cole stepped carefully over broken stones, his shoulders still throbbing from the crash. Vera followed close behind, her energy lance ready but lowered, scanning the horizon. The landscape stretched endlessly, barren and harsh, with deep cracks and steep cliffs. It was a dangerous place, and they both knew that. Ethan's eyes searched for water or food, anything that could help them survive longer. They had managed to stay alive through the storm, but that was only the first challenge. The planet was still full of threats, predators, unstable terrain, and the possibility of enemy patrols. He kept his senses sharp. Vera walked beside him, silent. Her expression was unreadable, but Ethan sensed her curiosity. She had spent centuries hunting humans and other prey, yet she had never seen one like him. He was different, not just brave, but careful, observant, and calm under pressure. She had fought many humans before, but none had faced her without fear. None had made her question everything she had been taught about her prey. They came to a deep canyon. Ethan paused at the edge, looking down. The bottom was a tangle of rocks and shadows, and the wind howled from below. He could see faint traces of movement, small, quick flashes that vanished too fast to identify. Danger was everywhere. Vera crouched beside him. "There is something down there," she said quietly. "Life, not your kind, not mine." "Something else," Ethan nodded. "We have to be careful. We cannot fight everything at once." They began to descend slowly, testing each rock before stepping. Ethan led the way, using his hand to brace against the canyon wall. Vera followed silently, her movements precise and quiet. She was an experienced warrior, and Ethan had to remind himself to match her pace. They were equals in survival, though in very different ways. Halfway down, they heard a low growl. Ethan froze. Vera's ears twitched slightly and her eyes narrowed. The sound came again, closer this time. Ethan looked around. Shadowed shapes moved quickly between the rocks, their forms too fast to fully see. "Stay behind me," Ethan whispered. He pulled his sidearm and advanced carefully. The creatures emerged from the shadows. They were strange alien beasts with long limbs and sharp claws, their skin a dull green that blended with the rocks. Their eyes glowed faintly in the low light. They hissed low and threatening, circling the two humans. Vera stepped forward, her lance glowing with energy. "Do not underestimate them," she warned. "They are fast and deadly," Ethan nodded. "I know. Just keep them back while I find a way through." The first creature lunged at him. Ethan dodged quickly, rolling across the rocks. His sidearm fired, a bright beam of energy striking the beast. It screeched and fell, but more were coming. Vera moved like a shadow, her lance cutting through the air. She struck one of the creatures in mid-leap, its body falling with a wet thud. Her movements were precise and controlled, each strike calculated. Ethan watched, impressed despite the danger. She was deadly, faster than anything he had faced before, but she was fighting to survive, not for pleasure. That made her dangerous in a different way. Ethan fired again, careful to aim for the creature's weak spots. He realized quickly that the beasts were smart, attacking in groups and trying to flank them. He dodged a strike and kicked a rock toward one, sending it off balance. Vera moved with him, cutting and thrusting with her lance. Together they fought, human and Kareth, their movements almost instinctive despite having just met. After several minutes, the creatures retreated, disappearing back into the shadows of the canyon. Ethan lowered his weapon, breathing heavily. "That was close," he said. Vera nodded, her chest rising and falling with quick, controlled breaths. "You are better than I expected," she said quietly. "Most humans would have panicked and run, or been killed." Ethan shook his head. "Fear is natural. I just do not let it control me." Vera looked at him closely, her eyes sharp. "You are not afraid?" "I am afraid," he admitted. "But I act anyway. That is what separates survival from failure." Vera considered his words. She had never heard a human speak like this. Most of them begged, pleaded, or fought blindly. Ethan spoke calmly, with purpose, even when facing danger. That made him unpredictable and, in her mind, dangerous in a way she could not ignore. They continued down the canyon, moving slowly and carefully. The creatures might return, and there could be more dangers waiting for them. Ethan scanned every shadow, every movement, while Vera stayed close, her eyes alert and her lance ready. After some time, they found a small underground stream. Water ran clear and fast, a rare gift on a planet like this. Ethan knelt and drank deeply, cupping water in his hands. Vera watched, her expression unreadable. She had no need for water, yet she did not leave. "Drink," Ethan said softly. "It is safe. Not like the surface pools, which may be toxic." Vera stepped closer, examining the water. She dipped a finger in and tasted it. Then she nodded, slightly satisfied. Ethan smiled faintly, happy to see her cooperating. Small steps like this built trust even between humans and Kareth. They rested by the stream for a while, gathering strength. Ethan tore strips from his clothing to make a better bandage for his shoulder. Vera did not interfere, but she observed silently, her eyes sharp and curious. Ethan could feel her studying him, measuring him, trying to understand the strange courage he displayed. "I have been trained to survive," Ethan said quietly, "but training is not enough. You need determination, focus, and a reason to keep going. Fear alone is not enough to make you act. You have to want to live even when it is hard." Vera considered this. Humans were fragile yet stubborn. They survived in ways her people did not always understand. Ethan's words made sense to her, even though she would not admit it fully. As the sun began to set, casting long shadows across the canyon, Ethan looked around. "We need shelter," he said. "The night will be dangerous and the temperature will drop." Vera nodded. "There is a cave nearby," she said. "We can use it. It will keep us safe from predators." They moved carefully toward the cave, watching every shadow. Ethan noticed the terrain growing more dangerous, with loose rocks and steep drops. He guided Vera, who followed silently, trusting his judgment. It was strange for her to follow a human, yet she did. She saw the logic, even if she did not like it. The cave was narrow but dry and warm compared to the canyon. Ethan made a small fire with some dry material he found, careful to keep it low. Vera sat across from him, her lance resting nearby. She did not warm herself by the fire, but she watched it closely, almost fascinated. Ethan handed her some rations. "You should eat," he said. "You need energy for tomorrow." Vera looked at the food with curiosity. She had not eaten human rations in centuries, but she took it, nibbling carefully. Ethan did the same, keeping his senses alert to the sounds of the canyon. "You are different from the others," Vera said finally, her voice quiet. "Most humans would have died before they even spoke." "You do not," Ethan shrugged. "We adapt. We survive. That is all." Vera studied him, her silver eyes reflecting the firelight. She realized something she had not expected. This human had changed her perception. He was not just strong or brave. He was clever, careful and calm under pressure. That made him dangerous in ways she had not considered. Hours passed and the cave grew quiet. Ethan and Vera sat together, each lost in thought. Outside, the wind howled faintly and the canyon was dark and empty. But inside there was a fragile sense of peace. They were alive. They were together. And they had survived the first real danger on Draxus 4. Ethan finally spoke. "We make a good team," he said softly. Vera blinked, surprised by the words. "Team?" she repeated. "Yes," Ethan said. "You and I, we survived together. That is what matters." Vera looked at him for a long time. She had never seen humans as equals, let alone allies. Yet here was one who had proven himself not with weapons alone, but with courage, intelligence, and determination. She did not fully understand it, but she felt it. "You are strange, human," she said finally. "Not like the others." Ethan smiled faintly. "Maybe, or maybe I am just trying to survive like you." Vera considered this, her eyes reflecting the firelight. For the first time, she questioned her mission. She had been trained to kill humans, to see them as weak and expendable. But this one, he had changed something inside her. The night grew darker and the temperature dropped. Ethan wrapped himself in what was left of his torn clothing. Vera remained alert, her eyes scanning the cave entrance. They would rest, but only lightly. Draxus 4 was not forgiving. Danger could come at any moment. And yet, despite the dangers, a strange trust had formed between them. They were not friends, not yet. But they were no longer enemies. Survival had brought them together, and perhaps for the first time, something else, curiosity, respect, even understanding had begun to grow. Ethan closed his eyes for a brief moment, listening to the sounds of the canyon. Vera did the same, though she remained alert. Outside, the world was harsh and dangerous, but inside the cave for now they had found a small refuge. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new dangers, and perhaps new understanding. But tonight they survived, and that survival was the first step toward something neither of them had expected, a fragile, growing connection between human and Kareth. The next morning the canyon was quiet. A thin mist hung over the rocks and the green sky was still heavy with clouds. Ethan woke early, as he always did, checking his sidearm and his surroundings. He knew that being alert was the difference between life and death on a planet like this. Vera was already awake, sitting silently on a ledge, her lance resting across her knees. She had not slept much. Her senses were always alert, scanning for any movement, any sound. Ethan watched her carefully. She was different from humans, yes, but she was learning in her own way. The storm, the creatures, and the long night had changed something inside her. She was beginning to see him not as prey, but as a companion. Even if she would not admit it, Ethan spoke first. "We need to move. The storm may have passed, but this canyon is dangerous. There may be predators, unstable rocks, and the other Kareth could be searching for me." Vera nodded. "You are correct. The Dominion will want you gone. I know they will send forces to retrieve you, or eliminate you. We must move before they arrive. Ethan studied her carefully. You are willing to help me? He asked. Vera's eyes met his, sharp and unwavering. For now, she said. It is my choice. But you must survive. That is my decision. Ethan smiled faintly. Then let's survive. They left the cave and moved carefully along the rocky terrain. The mist made visibility difficult, and Ethan had to guide Vera over narrow paths and jagged stones. Despite her alien strength and agility, she allowed him to lead, trusting his instincts. It was unusual for a Kareth to follow a human, but she did. She had seen his courage, his skill, and his intelligence. It was unlike anything she had ever known. After several hours of careful travel, they reached a plateau overlooking the canyon. Ethan scanned the horizon with binoculars, looking for water, shelter, or any signs of life. Vera stood beside him, silent but alert. There, Ethan said, pointing to a cluster of rocks in the distance. That looks like a possible shelter. Dry, stable, and defensible. Vera examined it. It is far. The terrain is dangerous, but it is your choice, Ethan nodded. We go together, step by step. The journey was slow and careful. They moved across rocky slopes, avoiding loose stones and unstable cliffs. Ethan kept his weapon ready, knowing the creatures from before could return and that the Kareth fleet could appear at any moment. Vera moved beside him, her lance glowing faintly as she scanned the area. Together they were a team, though still strangers in many ways. Midway through their journey, they encountered another group of creatures. These were smaller than the ones in the canyon, but quicker and more aggressive. Ethan fired first, taking careful aim. Vera struck with precision, her lance cutting down two before they could attack. The creatures hissed and retreated, leaving them shaken but unharmed. You are skilled, Vera said quietly, watching him reload. Most humans would have been overwhelmed by their speed. Ethan shook his head. Skill is nothing without awareness. You have to see them before they see you, anticipate their moves, and stay calm. Vera studied him carefully. She had never heard a human speak so calmly in battle. Most would panic, cry, or fight blindly. Ethan was different. His mind worked fast, but he remained calm, calculating and decisive. It was unusual, and it fascinated her. They reached the plateau as the sun began to rise higher in the sky. The shelter looked solid, a natural formation of rocks that could protect them from wind and predators. Ethan entered first, checking for hazards. Vera followed, scanning the surroundings with her keen eyes. It is safe, Ethan said. We can rest here and recover. But we must remain alert. The Dominion may send patrols soon. Vera nodded. We will rest lightly. I do not sleep deeply when danger is near. They settled inside the rocky shelter. Ethan cleaned his weapon, checked his bandages, and ate some rations. Vera observed silently, her body tense and ready. She did not eat much, but she accepted a small portion of his rations. Sharing food was a small gesture, but it meant trust. Ethan spoke quietly. Vera, why are you helping me? You know your people will consider this betrayal. Vera looked away, her eyes scanning the horizon. I have lived many cycles in the Dominion. I have killed humans, hunted them, and followed orders. But you are different. You are not like the others. You do not fight blindly. You do not panic. You do not betray yourself. That is unusual. Ethan nodded. I am not perfect. I make mistakes. But I survive. And right now, we need each other to survive. Vera considered his words carefully. She had never considered a human as an equal, let alone an ally. Yet here was one, sitting beside her, injured but calm, offering survival instead of conflict. It was strange, confusing, and yet it was real. The day passed slowly. They rested, drank from a small stream inside the shelter, and prepared for whatever challenges might come next. Vera began to speak more, asking questions about humans, about life, about survival. Ethan answered simply, clearly, without exaggeration or fear. Each answer seemed to intrigue her more, challenging the beliefs she had held for centuries. You humans are persistent, Vera said finally. Even when everything is against you, you continue. You do not give up. Ethan smiled faintly. Persistence is all we have sometimes. Giving up is not an option. Fear is natural, pain is natural, but stopping is not. Vera nodded slowly. Perhaps there is more to humans than I thought. As the sun began to set, casting long shadows across the plateau, Ethan and Vera prepared for the night. The shelter was safe, but the planet was never completely forgiving. Creatures could return and Kareth patrols could arrive at any moment. Ethan checked his weapons and supplies. Viera did the same, her eyes alert and scanning the surroundings. She had spent centuries hunting, but now she was learning to watch, not for prey, but for survival alongside another being. Night fell, and the plateau became dark and cold. Ethan and Vera kept a small fire, just enough to stay warm and visible to each other. The stars were faint behind the green clouds, and the wind howled softly. "You are brave," Vera said quietly. "Most humans would panic, but you do not." Ethan looked at her. "I am afraid, but I do not let it control me." "That is the difference," Vera studied him. She realized slowly that courage was not the absence of fear, but the choice to act despite it. Humans, she saw now, could be more than fragile creatures. They could be clever, adaptable, and surprisingly resilient. "I do not understand you," Vera admitted. "You are unusual." Ethan smiled faintly. "Perhaps. Or perhaps I am just trying to survive, like you." Vera looked at him silent. For the first time, she questioned her orders. She had been trained to kill humans, to see them as weak and expendable. But Ethan, he was different. He had survived, and he had made her question everything. The night passed slowly, each listening to the sounds outside. Small creatures moved in the distance, and the wind swept over the plateau. But inside their shelter, there was a small sense of peace. They were alive, together, and that was enough for now. Ethan finally spoke. "Tomorrow we will have to move again. The Dominion will send forces, and we cannot stay here long." Vera nodded. "I understand. But I will follow you. You have proven yourself capable. That is unusual for a human." Ethan smiled faintly. "Then we survive together, step by step." Vera looked at him carefully, her silver eyes reflecting the firelight. She realized for the first time that survival was not just about strength or weapons. It was about courage, intelligence, and trust. And with this human, she could survive. The fire burned low, the night grew colder, and the plateau was quiet. But inside the rocky shelter, something had shifted. Ethan and Vera were no longer enemies. They were not friends, not yet. But they were allies, bound by survival and a fragile understanding. And that understanding, small as it was, could change everything. Tomorrow, they would face more dangers, creatures, the harsh terrain, and perhaps the Dominion itself. But for now, they were alive. Together. Vera sat silently, her lance resting across her knees. Ethan leaned against a rock, his eyes closed briefly. Outside, the wind swept across the plateau, carrying dust and whispers of the canyon below. They had survived one more day. And in that survival, something fragile had begun to grow. A trust, a connection, and perhaps the first spark of something neither of them could yet name. For now, that spark was enough. The night was darker than usual on Draxus 4. The green sky had faded into a heavy black, thick clouds blotting out both suns. The wind howled across the rocky plateau, carrying dust and loose stones like tiny missiles. Ethan Cole tightened the straps on his shoulder bandage and checked his sidearm. His muscles ached from the crash, from the fight with the canyon creatures, and from climbing the cliffs. But there was no time to rest. Vera stood beside him, her silver eyes scanning the horizon. She had not slept properly for the last 2 nights. Her lance glowed faintly, ready at all times. She had faced humans before, but never one like Ethan. She had expected fear, weakness, and hesitation. Instead, she found courage, patience, and intelligence. She realized that this human had something that made him dangerous in a way she had never considered. He could inspire loyalty and trust, even in her. "They will come," she said quietly. "The Dominion will send forces. They know you are here." Ethan nodded. "I know we cannot hide forever. But we can fight if we have to. Step by step together." Vera considered this. She had been trained to follow orders, to eliminate humans, to see them as prey. And yet, for the first time, she was questioning those orders. Killing Ethan would be easy, but it would not make sense. He had earned her trust, and more than that, he had shown her a different way of seeing the world. They moved carefully toward the edge of the plateau, scanning the terrain. Below, the canyon twisted into jagged shadows, and the faint outlines of alien creatures moved among the rocks. Ethan could feel the tension building in the air. Danger was close, and they had no choice but to face it. Suddenly, a bright light flashed across the sky. A Kareth ship descended, cutting through the wind with a low hum. Ethan crouched behind a rock, signaling Vera to do the same. The ship was sleek, black, and clearly built for speed and combat. Its sensors would detect them instantly if they moved carelessly. Vera whispered, "They have come for you. They will not leave until you are dead or captured." Ethan's jaw tightened. "Then we make them regret it." The ship landed a short distance away. A hatch opened and several Kareth warriors stepped out, their weapons glowing in the dark. Ethan counted 6, lightly armed but deadly. Vera moved beside him, her lance raised, ready to strike. "You face the Dominion," she said quietly. "Do you understand what will happen if they capture you?" Ethan nodded. "I do. And I am ready, but I am not alone." The first Kareth warrior stepped forward, scanning the plateau. Ethan fired first, aiming carefully. A bright beam struck the warrior, sending him sprawling across the rocks. The other warriors reacted instantly, firing in return. Ethan ducked behind a boulder, firing again. Vera leaped forward, her lance slicing through the air, cutting down 2 more warriors with precision and speed. The battle was fast and brutal. The Kareth warriors were skilled and coordinated, but Ethan and Vera worked together, moving as one. Ethan's sidearm flashed repeatedly, each shot precise, while Vera's lance glowed and struck with deadly accuracy. They covered each other, moving through the rocks, forcing the enemy to fight on their terms. Ethan realized something important during the fight. Vera was not just strong, she was clever. She anticipated the warrior's moves, blocked attacks, and created openings for him to strike. Together they were unstoppable. One warrior lunged at Ethan from behind a rock. He dodged just in time, rolling across the stone. Vera was there immediately, thrusting her lance and forcing the attacker back. Another warrior tried to flank them, but Ethan fired, hitting him in the leg and making him stumble. The Dominion warriors hesitated. They had faced humans before, but never one so skilled, so fearless, and they had never seen a Kareth fight beside a human, not as an ally, but as a partner. Vera's decision to help Ethan was already changing the battlefield. Ethan glanced at her. "We can do this," he shouted over the noise. Vera nodded. "Do not let them overwhelm you. Stay together." Hours seemed to pass in minutes. The fight was constant, brutal, and exhausting. The rocks became slippery with dust and blood, and the wind tore at their bodies. Ethan felt pain from old wounds and fresh strikes, but he kept moving. He had no choice. Survival demanded it. Vera struck again, taking down another warrior. Ethan fired rapidly, his aim steady despite the exhaustion. One by one, the Dominion warriors fell. The remaining 2 retreated, realizing they were outmatched. The ship above them began to hum, preparing to leave. Vera lowered her lance slightly, breathing hard. Ethan checked his sidearm and nodded at her. "We did it," he said. "For now." Vera's eyes softened slightly, though she remained alert. "You are remarkable," she said. "Most humans would have died long ago." Ethan shook his head. "No, humans survive because we try, even when we are afraid, even when it seems impossible. That is what matters." Vera considered this. She had seen courage before, yes, but never like this. Ethan's fear was real, but he did not let it control him. He acted with purpose, precision, and determination. It was unusual, and it fascinated her. The plateau was quiet now, save for the wind and the distant hum of the departing Kareth ship. Ethan and Vera stood together, looking at the horizon. The night was still dark, but the danger had passed for now. Vera spoke quietly. "Why aren't you afraid, human? You were outnumbered. You could have died, and yet you did not hesitate." Ethan looked at her calmly. "I am afraid, but I choose to act anyway. Fear tells me what to watch, what to avoid. Courage tells me what is worth living for." Vera blinked, unprepared for the answer. It was not arrogance. It was not bravado. It was simple truth. And it left her breathless. For the first time in her life, she realized that she had been wrong about humans. They were not weak. They were strong in ways her people could not understand. Ethan smiled faintly. "You see now. We survive because we care, because we fight, because we do not give up. Alone we may fall, but together we can face anything." Vera's silver eyes reflected the faint starlight above. She realized that the bond between them was stronger than any orders, stronger than fear and stronger than duty. She had been trained to follow commands, to obey without question. But now she questioned everything. "You have changed me," she said quietly. I do not know what to think anymore." Ethan stepped closer, his expression calm and steady. "You do not have to think. You only have to survive, and that is enough." Vera looked at him, feeling something she had never felt before. It was warmth, Trust in something fragile and new. She could not name it, but she felt it in her chest. A connection that was stronger than fear, stronger than the Dominion, stronger than anything she had known. The night passed slowly. Ethan and Vera kept watch, alert for any remaining threats. The plateau was quiet and the wind had calmed. For the first time, they allowed themselves to rest lightly, their bodies tired but alive. When dawn came, the green sky faded slightly, showing hints of the twin suns. Ethan checked his communicator again. The signal was weak, but he could reach the Terran Union fleet. Rescue was close. Vera watched him, silent. She realized that she had a choice to make. She could follow her orders and leave him to the Dominion, or she could stay and fight beside him. "You have proven something important," she said quietly. "Humans are not weak. They survive, and I will not leave you." Ethan looked at her, surprised but not afraid. "Then we survive together. Always." Vera's hand rested briefly on his shoulder, not as a threat but as a sign of trust. She had made her choice. Duty no longer controlled her. Fear no longer controlled her. She would fight beside him no matter the cost. The sound of the Terran fleet arrived faintly in the distance. Ethan smiled. "Help is coming." "We made it," Vera nodded. "We survived. Together." They watched the ships descend from the sky. The battle was over, but their bond had changed something deep inside both of them. Ethan had survived, yes, but he had also changed Vera. She had seen courage, determination, and trust in ways she had never imagined. As the Terran ships landed and soldiers began to disembark, Vera looked at Ethan. "You are remarkable," she said again, softly. Ethan shook his head. "No, humans are remarkable when they refuse to give up. That is all." Vera smiled faintly. For the first time in centuries, she felt hope. She had been taught to fear humans, to see them as weak and unworthy. But now she saw something different. She saw courage, loyalty, and the ability to survive even in the harshest conditions. And in that moment, Vera understood what she had never understood before. Courage was not the absence of fear, but the choice to act in spite of it. Humans lived by that code, and Ethan Cole had proven it true. She looked at him, and for the first time she felt something else: trust, connection, and perhaps even respect. It was fragile, small, but real, and it would change everything. As the Terran fleet lifted them from the plateau, Ethan and Vera stood side by side, human and Kareth, survivor and warrior. They had faced death together, fought impossible odds, and emerged alive. The storm, the creatures, the Dominion, all were behind them now. Ahead was safety, recovery, and perhaps a future neither of them had imagined. Vera looked at Ethan one last time before boarding the ship. "You are fearless," she said softly. Ethan smiled faintly. "No, I just refuse to let fear control me." "That is the difference." Vera nodded, understanding at last. It was a lesson she would carry for the rest of her life.